Today, on the Locked On Blues podcast, the St. Louis Blues faced off against the Chicago Blackhawks last night in preseason, continuing their preseason dominance, winning 4-1. However, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows as Scott Perunovich had suffered yet another injury. And the optimism isn't too high from Craig Berube, so I'm going to be reacting to the win, but also reacting to the injury. And talking about should the Blues go out and trade for a defenseman now that Perunovich might be out long term. Should be a very fun episode. Make sure y'all stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm your host, as always, Josh Hyman. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, thanks for coming back. Thanks for making Locked On Blues your first listen. We are free and available wherever you can get your podcast, plus on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button, getting close to 500 subscribers. Big milestone, big fun stuff there. One quick note before I continue. I know that the audio in the YouTube videos has been a point of contention lately. I've been really wrestling with how to improve the quality. It's not a microphone issue. I saw some of you guys commenting that. It's more of a connection issue. The host that we use to stream our videos so I can get like these really cool graphics that you see relies on an internet connection, and my internet connection has been a little bit spotty, so that's why the audio has been a little bit spotty. However, I think I finally came up with a solution. You'll notice it in the last episode I posted. I took it down and reposted it. Today's episode should be good on YouTube as well, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me. And hey, here's to some beautiful audio in YouTube videos moving forward. Good feedback from you guys. I didn't even notice it was that bad in yesterday's episode. So, should be better now. But please, like I said, let me know if you have any other criticisms, constructive criticisms. It makes the show better, especially doing this on my own. It's been difficult to sort of iron out everything, editing the audio, editing the video, doing the social media, all that stuff. So I'm still learning. And I appreciate you guys, having my back, supporting me, all that fun stuff. So today's episode should be the first of many in a stream of new quality, higher quality content. That being said, though, let's just jump into today's episode. The first segment is going to be about the game between the St. Louis Blues and Chicago Blackhawks. The second segment is going to be about Scott Perunovich and his injury and just sort of what it means for him in his career. And then the third segment is going to be addressing some rumors that the Blues have been in because of the Scott Perunovich injury. Jake Chychrun, of course. Who else would be in those rumors? So let's just jump right into it, shall we? First things first, the Blues did play a game last night, and it was a fun game. A little bit touch and go there for a little bit. Craig Berube commented that he wasn't too happy with the effort of the team up until the third period, and I would tend to agree. I think they definitely looked a little bit sloppy, a little bit sluggish, a little bit slow. However, that is understandable because they've been on the ice. I think it was 6 days straight. Working hard, playing hard, all that fun stuff. But they looked good in the third period, where it really mattered. They went in and they really shut the door against a mediocre Blackhawks team, as we all know. So Ryan O'Reilly opened up the scoring with a power play goal. He went on to have a great night. He had a goal and 2 assists, looking like he has not lost a step. That was definitely a concern for me heading into the season with Ryan O'Reilly's contract being up. Is he going to regress or is he going to be that same dominant player that we know and love? And it is just preseason, but last night was a really good indication that Ryan O'Reilly is still a darn good player. He's still the one center to an extent. He can still go out there and produce offensively and defensively, and he looked great on both ends of the ice. He scored a power play goal off of a tip-in just 2 minutes into the game. The Blues continue to score fast and early in these games, which I appreciate. It really takes a lot of the stress out of those beginning game situations. Blackhawks tied it up near the end of the second period. And then it was a little bit touch and go there. It really felt like the Blues might let this one slip away, but the third period was very strong. Justin Falk came in about halfway through, scored another power play goal, so that's 2 power play goals in this game. The power play has looked really, really, really good in the preseason so far. Scott Perunovich has looked good on the power play with an assist on that first goal from O'Reilly. Unfortunately, he was injured, so he won't be able to be that power play quarterback at the beginning of the regular season, and who knows how long he's going to be out, because the optimism was not there in terms of post-game comments from Craig Berube, but that's a second segment issue. So Justin Falk gets a goal assisted from Ryan O'Reilly and Braden Shen, which I liked, and then I gotta even see this guy's first name, Griffin Luce Griffin. Gets a go-ahead goal, a goal that doubles the Blues' lead, puts them up 3-1. Big goal from him, another assist from Ryan O'Reilly, and the first preseason point for Jordan Kyrou, the new highly paid man. So good to see there. And then Nikita Alexandrov gets another power play goal to put the Blues up 4-1 at the tail end of the game, with assists from Klim Kostin and Matt Kessel. So a couple notes from this game before we head into the first break. The first line of Brandon Saad, Ryan O'Reilly, and Jordan Kyrou, I believe it was, looks pretty good out there. I want to confirm before I go on and talk about the whole segment. I'm pretty sure that's who it was out there, because Craig Berube did say that he could foresee, Brandon Saad, Ryan O'Reilly, Jordan Kyrou. Craig Berube did come out and say that he could see that being a first line that he sticks with at least to start the regular season, and I talked about it a little bit in yesterday's episode about how I would like to see that, and the potential of that line. I think we saw it last night. They didn't get any 5v5 goals, but O'Reilly and Kyrou look like a good duo when they were out there on the power play, producing some good opportunities and stuff. So I would love to see that line stick together. I think they looked really good. Power play looked really, really good. As I said, it looks like they haven't lost a step from last year when they had a really strong power play and stuff. So I think special teams is going to be a big positive for the St. Louis Blues. Heading into this season, I think they're going to have a lot of success on the power play and the penalty kill as well. Both areas have looked very, very good for the St. Louis Blues. That being said, though, there is a little bit more I want to talk about from this game before jumping into the Scott Perunovich injury. But before I get into that, I want to tell you guys about our good friends over at BetOnline. Now, BetOnline.net is your number one source for football and hockey betting info this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Be right back with the second half of today's episode. All right, so a few more notes that I wanted to hit from the game, a few more positives before we get into some of the negatives, and the first of which is the goaltending. Jordan Binnington looked really, really good. He stopped all but one of the shots he faced and looked very confident doing it. He had that huge toe save that kept the Blues, in contention in that game. That was all over Twitter. If you missed that, it was a really good save. Definitely go check that out. But Binnington looked good. I talked about him in the preview, which went up on YouTube for a little bit, but ended up on YouTube today. So a little bit out of order there just due to the audio issues. But if you didn't listen to the preview before the game, I really nailed it in the sense that I anticipated Jordan Binnington coming out and looking dominant. Again, I said it, it is just preseason, but he's going to come out with a chip on his shoulder. He's going to come in angry from his injury and wanting to prove himself and wanting to prove that he is an elite starter in this league and not just a one-hit wonder. And he did that last night. Again, it's just preseason, so I'm not getting too high or too low off of anything. But again, similar to what I said about Thomas Greiss, if he went out there and allowed 5 goals on 10 shots, obviously that's an exaggeration, but still, if it was a very poor performance, we'd be talking about it. So that doesn't mean we can't talk about the positive performances as well. And Jordan Binnington looked very, very strong out there. He looked confident. He looked fully healthy and recovered. Flexible, limber, quick, all those adjectives that you want to see out of a goalie. Jordan Binnington embodied that to a T last night. And I also want to talk about the backup goalie, and I want to make sure I get that name right. Vadim Zherenko. I want to just give him a little bit of props. He was really good, and there's a bit of a fun fact about him and his situation, his story. So he is a Russian goaltender, and Russian athletes have been dealing with visa issues for a while just due to the war with Ukraine and all that stuff. So heading into training camp and heading into last night's game, I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is, but basically Vadim Zherenko had not skated all summer. It had been 2 months before he had skated, since he had skated before he resumed activity with the Blues. I'm not sure how many practices he got in or if last night was his first time skating, but definitely a stressful situation for him, coming in as a goalie with almost no expectations, with a ton of rust. He hadn't skated in forever, dealing with visa issues, finally gets a chance to shine in a preseason game, and he comes in and pitches a shutout in his limited minutes. Just great stuff there. Real positive story. I hope maybe one day, we'll see him up with the big club with the St. Louis Blues. You never know. At the very least, I'd love to see him get some AHL action and stuff this year, depending on how that roster situation works out. But anyways, positives aside. Oh no, there's one more positive actually. I forgot. Nick Leddy. He looked really good. I have been worried about Nick Leddy all off season. Just, did the Blues not make a mistake, but did the Blues kind of just settle for Leddy? And it's tough because in reality they didn't have a whole lot of other options, and the defense did improve when they brought in Nick Leddy. But when they go out and give him this big extension, you definitely start to worry, like, is that really a guy you want to have committed to your top 4 defense for the next 4 years? And even though it was only preseason last night, he gave every indication that the answer to that question is yes. He looked really, really strong. At times, he was the best defenseman on the ice for the St. Louis Blues. And it kind of reflects on what I've been saying about Nick Leddy this entire time. And it's just like, you can't get your hopes up too much with him. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. He's a steady Eddie at defense. Or a steady Letty. That's pathetic. But you're gonna get sort of similar play from him night in, night out. He's never gonna be the guy that's gonna go out there and be flashy and be a number 1 defenseman. But he is a solid player to fill a role on your team. He knows the system. He does something really well that the Blues need in terms of his transition play and his breakout skills, getting the puck from the defensive zone into the neutral zone. That is his primary skill, and he really put it on display with the St. Louis Blues last season. He really put it on display last night as well. And I'm optimistic about him heading into this season. I think he can surprise a lot of people now that he knows the system, now that he, is more comfortable with his playing partners and with the other defensemen and with the coaching style. I think he's going to have an even better time with the Blues than he did at the tail end of last season. Last season was up and down for Nick Leddy. There were times where he looked really, really good, and there were times where he really felt you had to hide him. But like I said, there were times in the Colorado series where he did a really good job against guys like Nathan McKinnon, but there were also other times where it felt like, he was a liability out there. So if he can sort of shift that to being more of a positive impact player and less of a liability, obviously, that's self-explanatory, but I think he could have a pretty solid year for the St. Louis Blues, and they can sort of have a defense by committee situation going on with a really solid top 4 rather than having a number 1 defenseman that you put out there for 30 minutes a night. As much as that would be nice, the Blues just don't have a guy that's equipped to do that right now. But they do have 4 defensemen that can play, 22, 24 minutes a night and, have a lot of success doing that. And Nick Leddy is going to be a big part of that. He has to be a big part of that. And last night was a positive in terms of that. Now, talked about a lot of positives. 2/3 of this episode were all good. Scott Perunovich got hurt again. I'm just gutted, man. Like, beyond hockey, I just feel bad for him. I feel so bad for him. He's had a lot to prove, undersized defenseman, got passed over in his entirety. The first draft he was eligible, nobody picked him. He comes out, gets drafted by the St. Louis Blues, wins the Hobey Baker Trophy, tons of hype, tons of potential, battles with injuries, basically is out for a majority of last season, and before that, he's just shoulder injury, wrist injury. He's just dealt with a lot, and then he comes into this training camp, this preseason this year with the most solid role on the team that he's ever had, and he gets hurt again. It just sucks. Just human being to human being, you gotta feel for him. I don't want to say he's lost his chance, because I don't think that's true. I don't think this injury is going to be season ending, but he's coming into training camp ready, he had gotten tons of praise from the team, from Craig Berube, about how ready he is, and he had a solid role, and he comes out and gets hurt, and it's going to be a lot harder to reintegrate him into the lineup, halfway through the season or a couple weeks into the season, whatever the injury ends up being, versus if they were to try to integrate him right from week one, especially considering how competitive that third pairing defensively is going to be. He was always going to be battling for that spot, and now it's going to be all that more difficult for him to, have a solid impact season. So I hope he recovers soon. Still have really high expectations for him. I think he can be a really solid player for the St. Louis Blues. I don't think it's time to overreact and say, his career's over or he's a bust and you just ship him out, anything like that. It's just a fluke, unless I'm not sure if it's the same arm that he had dealt with a shoulder injury before. If so, that's concerning. We've seen that with Vladimir Tarasenko in terms of having that shoulder issue be reoccurring. So I'm sure we'll learn more information about that in the coming days. But until then, we just got to hope that he's keeping his head up high. He's still doing what he can to stay ready for when he does recover injury-wise. That being said, though, there are a lot of rumors of the Blues need to go out and trade for Jacob Chychrun and all this stuff. So in this third and final segment, I'm going to be getting into those rumors. Should the Blues make a trade? Should they pull the trigger on a big trade or not? Make sure you stay tuned for that. Be right back. All right, so Scott Perunovich gets injured. Half the reactions on Twitter are, "Oh man, poor guy. He can't stay healthy. Wish the best for him." Then the other half of the reactions are, "We need to go out and trade for Jacob Chychrun." And I don't know how I want to address this, because Jacob Chychrun has always been, and I think might always will be, a white whale trade prospect for the St. Louis Blues. He's a guy that his name is always going to come up whenever there's a vacancy at defense. He came up all last season, and then they didn't get him. They went out and they got Nick Leddy, and now that Perunovich is injured, left defenseman, Jacob Chychrun is a left defenseman, the reactions are, "Oh, let's go get Chychrun." And surface level, I'm going to maintain the same feelings that I've had since the beginning. Like, would I love Jacob Chychrun to be on the St. Louis Blues? Obviously. He's a great player. He's young. He's stuck in an Arizona Coyotes organization that is limiting his potential and limiting his ability, and he would only thrive with another team, especially a team like the St. Louis Blues. However, with the Arizona Coyotes, he might be their number one trade target or trade piece, or he's up there. And they're going to want a lot for him. And right now, with the Blues having their top four as shored up as it is, I don't know how much sense it makes to go out and trade for a guy like Jacob Chychrun, when in reality, you have a top four that at least you think you can win with. And now, I'm not saying if you swap out Nick Leddy for Jacob Chychrun, it won't make the Blues better, because, oh baby, would it make the Blues better? Would swapping out Nick Leddy for Jacob Chychrun elevate the Blues defense to elite level? I think so. However, just looking at the way that they gave out contracts and looking at the contracts of the defensemen, I just don't think the Blues are interested in trading for Jacob Chychrun. Andy Strickland came out and said there have been no talks between the Blues and Coyotes regarding Chychrun recently. So we can wish all we want, but the reality is it's probably not going to happen. And the asking price is also probably too high. I don't know what the asking price is, but based off of some of the trades we've seen this offseason, I'm guessing it's astronomical, and I'm guessing that's why the Blues haven't pulled the trigger sooner. I think it makes sense. I think it fits the timeline of Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, and I wouldn't be surprised if, next offseason or this upcoming offseason or even the trade deadline, things get more serious. But right now, training camp, preseason, it just doesn't make sense. You really don't see big trades happen right now, typically in the NHL. You got a group of guys that you've committed with, that they've worked together through training camp, and it just would be a tall task to bring in a brand new, X factor player like Chychrun and just say, hey guys, here's a new defenseman, he's gonna be getting all your minutes. Adapt. Chemistry is so huge for the Blues. We saw that in the year that they brought in O'Reilly and Bozak and brought Perron back, and then they went on to win the Stanley Cup, but at first the chemistry was so poor that the team just didn't have success, and right now is just not the time to bring in a guy like Jacob Chychrun. Speaking from the front office perspective, obviously, if I got a notification on my phone right now, the Blues traded for Jacob Chychrun, I would eat my words and be over the moon. I would love Jacob Chychrun to be on this team. I love when dynamic players are on the Blues. Obviously, that's the best part of hockey. Just logistically, it doesn't make sense right now. If Scott Perunovich is out long term for the season and the defense struggles and Jacob Chychrun is still available come trade deadline or come next offseason, then yes, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. I'm not closing the door on that. I think it's something that the Blues have been linked to for a while for a reason, because it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, it just doesn't make sense right now. Like I said, you don't see trades of that magnitude happen 2 weeks before the regular season. It just doesn't happen, ever. So put a bookmark in that. I'm sure Jacob Chychrun's name will be in plenty episode titles throughout this season and throughout the next offseason as rumors continue to swirl. And like I said, I would love nothing more to see him in a Blues uniform for the right price. I don't know. We'll see. That being said, that is all the time I have for you guys on today's episode of the Locked On Blues podcast. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to me on. It is completely free, as y'all know. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Getting real close to 500. Only about 25 away. Big milestone there. Real exciting. 8-year-old me would be losing his mind right now if I knew I had a YouTube channel. But seriously, though, thanks for the support. I've been loving this YouTube stuff. It's a lot of fun. Make sure you follow Locked On Blues on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Locked On Blues. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. Thank you all so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.